The sun beat down hard on the dry Wyoming earth, its rays dancing off the tin rooftops and rusted fences of Canyonville. It was the kind of small town where everyone knew your business, especially if you were poor, or worse, if you were poor and proud. Emily Ray Miller stood at the edge of the sprawling Sterling Crest Ranch, her boots coated in dust, her face flushed with both sun and nerves. Clutched tightly in her hand was a crumpled canvas pouch that jingled every time she moved. Inside were $87.23, every penny she had saved from selling wildflowers outside the diner, collecting recyclables, and doing odd jobs for old neighbors. The ranch in front of her stretched for acres, glistening with wealth. Gleaming white fences bordered lush paddocks. Men in button-downs and cowboy hats leaned against the railings, laughing with cigars between their teeth. Horses, sleek and glossy, trotted in circles like royalty, but Emily wasn't here for those horses. She was here for him, the broken one, the horse they called Tornado. He stood at the far end of the auction paddock, tied to a post with a frayed rope. One leg was wrapped in filthy gauze, and a fresh welt marred his side. His coat, once a gleaming chestnut, was patchy with mud and sores. But Emily had seen something the others didn't, a glimmer in his eyes. Not fear, not surrender, but something like shame and hope. "Who let the flower girl in?" a man scoffed, adjusting his expensive sunglasses. "I think she brought her lunch money," another chuckled. Laughter erupted as Russell Langford himself stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in starched denim and leather boots that probably cost more than most folks' monthly wages. He owned Sterling Crest Ranch, half the town, and every local politician's loyalty. "Well, well," he said, flashing a cold smile. "Didn't expect the help to show up with pocket change and ambition. You lost, sweetheart?" Emily's cheeks burned, but she stood her ground. "I'm here to buy a horse." Russell let out a deep laugh, throwing his head back. "Is that right? And which one caught your eye? The $40,000 stud? Or maybe Firecracker over there? He's a crowd favorite." She pointed. "That one, the lame one, in the back." The laughter died instantly. Men looked at each other, then at Russell. "Tornado?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Emily nodded. "How much?" Russell snorted. "That thing ain't worth the feed it eats. He's been through 3 owners, kicked 2 trainers and tore his tendon clean 6 months ago. He's useless." "He's not useless," Emily said quietly. "He's just broken." Russell stepped closer, folding his arms as he looked her over. "And what makes you think you can fix what the professionals couldn't?" "I don't need to fix him," she said. "I just want to give him a home." The crowd erupted again, but this time it was sharper, more mocking. Some even applauded. Russell held up a hand to silence them. "Fine, $1. Emily blinked. "What?" $1, he repeated. "You give me your precious piggy bank, and he's yours. But no returns, no complaints, no charity drives when he drops dead next week. You take him. You own every piece of his misery. Got it?" Her fingers trembled as she pulled out the canvas pouch and handed it over. Russell took it like it was garbage, then dug inside with mock curiosity. $87 and change, he muttered. "This town just gets funnier every day." He turned and waved toward a stable hand. "Untie that sack of bones and let the girl drag him home." Emily approached Tornado slowly. He didn't move. His ears twitched, but he didn't shy away when she touched his muzzle. She whispered something only he could hear and gently placed her hand on his neck. The crowd had started to disperse, but one boy stayed behind. A pale-haired kid in polished boots and a clean Wrangler shirt. Landon, Russell's son. He had watched everything in silence, his jaw clenched tight. When Emily tugged on the rope to lead Tornado away, the horse stumbled, nearly collapsing. She braced him with her body, gritting her teeth. "Come on," she whispered. "I won't leave you." A few men laughed from afar. "She'll be back begging by sunset." Russell smirked. "When the beast croaks in her backyard, maybe she'll sell him back for kindling." Emily kept walking, her shoulders squared, her small figure shrinking in the distance as she led the battered horse toward the broken part of town. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Landon wandered toward the barn. He found his father still by the paddock, sipping whiskey. "You really gave her that horse?" Landon asked. Russell didn't look up. "Sure did. That horse was a curse. Let her learn." "She's just a kid." "So were you once," Russell muttered. "But you knew better than to throw money at lost causes." Landon stared out toward the direction Emily had gone, then whispered, almost to himself, "Maybe she knows something we don't." The job took hours. When she was done, she slumped against the fence, exhausted, her hands caked in grime and medicine. Tornado stood nearby, still wary but calm, breathing steadily in the dark. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing, Mama, but I think you'd tell me to try anyway." The next morning, the town was buzzing. "You hear what that Miller girl did? Paid $1 for a deadbeat horse? She's going to learn the hard way." At the diner where Emily washed dishes after school, even the waitresses chuckled. "She'll give up before the week's out," said Doris, shaking her head. "Girls got more heart than sense." But Emily didn't care. Every afternoon after work, she went straight to Tornado. She cleaned his wound. She brought scraps of apples and carrots from the diner's kitchen. She sat on a milk crate and read old paperbacks aloud, not because he understood, but because the silence felt less heavy that way. One afternoon, while she was brushing the tangles from his mane, a low voice startled her. "You always talk to animals like they're people?" She turned. Landon stood just beyond the fence, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a brown paper bag. "What are you doing here?" she asked, defensive. He shrugged. "I brought oats. Figured he wasn't eating prime alfalfa back here." Emily hesitated. Tornado lifted his head and sniffed the air. Landon stepped closer. "Relax. I didn't come to laugh. I saw how he looked at you. Thought that was kind of wild." Emily took the bag slowly. "Thanks, I guess." Landon leaned on the fence, watching the horse. "He tried to throw me once. Scared the hell out of me. Dad said to get rid of him. He didn't need to be gotten rid of. He needed someone who gave a damn." That hung between them for a beat. "I don't get you," Landon finally said. "You could have bought a bike or something with that money. Instead, you got this." Emily smiled faintly. "He's not a this, he's Tornado, and he's mine now." Later that week, while changing Tornado's bandage, Emily noticed something. The swelling was down. She knelt beside his leg, her fingers trembling as she gently touched the skin around the wound. He didn't flinch. For the first time, he let her finish without pulling away. "You're healing," she whispered, blinking back tears. "You're really healing." She ran to the shed and pulled out her mama's old saddle. Not to ride him, not yet, but just to let him feel the leather, to know it wasn't the enemy. He snorted when she brought it near but didn't shy away. Then, for the first time, Tornado leaned into her, just slightly, just enough for her to feel the shift. The next morning, Emily was late for school. She'd spent hours preparing a soft bed of hay in the shed, and her hands still smelled of liniment. As she rushed past the post office, she caught sight of a familiar truck. Russell Langford was unloading boxes with a man in a sheriff's jacket. Emily slowed. Sheriff Dayton glanced up and caught her staring. "She's the one who bought the horse," Russell said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The sheriff studied her. "That so?" Emily nodded. Russell leaned in, his voice quiet but sharp. "You'd better hope that horse don't cause any more trouble, sweetheart. You break it, you buy it, and everything that comes after." That night, Tornado was restless. He circled the pen again and again, his ears twitching toward every sound. Emily sat with him in the dark, unsure what was wrong. She didn't know it yet, but word had spread. About the girl, about the horse, about how she made the impossible look possible. And not everyone in town liked that idea. The backyard behind Emily's trailer wasn't much, just a patch of scrubby weeds, a half-collapsed shed, and a rusted water trough that hadn't seen use in years. But to Tornado, it might as well have been Eden. Emily led him slowly across the gravel, her boots crunching with each step. His gait was uneven, his injured leg dragging slightly with every movement. But he followed her. Not because he trusted her, not yet, but because she hadn't yanked the rope or shouted or turned away in disgust. She talked to him the whole way, not loudly, just soft, steady murmurs, like she was telling secrets. "This ain't no fancy stable, boy," she said, pushing open the broken gate to the corral she'd patched together out of old fencing and borrowed planks. "But it's safe, and it's yours." Tornado stopped at the threshold. His eyes scanned the space like he didn't believe her. "It's okay," she whispered. "You can rest now." He stepped inside. That night, under the pale light of a single porch bulb, Emily worked on him with nothing but a bucket of warm water, a sponge, and her mama's old vet kit. She cut away the filthy bandages from his leg, her heart aching at the angry wound beneath. Flies buzzed, and Tornado flinched at every sting. "It's okay, I know it hurts," she said, dipping the sponge again, "but I'm not going to let you rot. Not here." The days grew longer, hotter. In the sweltering Arkansas summer, the town of Mercy Ridge buzzed with gossip, and Emily could feel it pressing on her skin like the humidity. By now, Tornado's limp had lessened. His coat was glossier, his eyes clearer, but his past hadn't left him. Every time someone approached too fast, or a truck backfired down the road, he jolted. Sometimes he trembled at night, and Emily would sit with him, reading from her mama's old veterinary journals, or humming quiet songs she only remembered in fragments. She wasn't just healing a horse. She was exorcising a ghost. One Friday afternoon, as Emily returned from school, she found the makeshift gate to Tornado's pen slightly ajar. Her breath caught. She dropped her backpack and sprinted to the corral. Tornado was still there, thank God, but spooked, pacing anxiously, snorting at the shadows of the shed. The feed bucket had been tipped over, and muddy footprints marred the dirt near the fence. Emily scanned the area. Something felt wrong. She found a boot print too large to be hers or Landon's, and under the shed's loose panel, a half-smoked cigarette, still warm. Someone had been there, someone who didn't belong. The next morning, she headed to the diner early. Doris, as usual, was already refilling coffee for the early crowd, but today, the usual snark in her tone was replaced with something else, caution. "You ought to be careful, Em," she said, barely above a whisper, as she slid a plate of scrambled eggs across the counter. "Langford's been asking around. Got his eyes on that horse again." Emily's stomach tightened. "He said some nonsense about repossessing damaged goods. You didn't sign any papers, right?" "Number just handed him the $1, Emily replied. "He didn't want anything legal tied to it." Doris leaned in. Then he's got no claim, but that don't mean he won't try. Later that week, Landon showed up again, this time with a trailer of clean hay and a fresh salt lick. "You planning to open a stable?" Emily asked, raising an eyebrow. "I owed you one," he said simply, unloading the supplies. "And Tornado. He deserves more than weeds and broken planks." They worked in near silence for an hour, rebuilding the front portion of the shed with salvaged wood. The sun beat down, sweat glistened on their brows, and at one point they both paused, breathless and laughing, hands caked with dust. "You know," Landon said, wiping his forehead, "my dad used to say that horse was cursed." Emily glanced at Tornado. Maybe he was, until he got a second chance. Landon watched her for a beat, his expression softening. "You give second chances like most people hand out Band-Aids." She shrugged. "Someone gave one to me once. I'm just paying it forward." That evening, Emily received a folded note taped to her trailer door. "You don't know what you're messing with. Get rid of the horse before someone gets hurt." There was no signature. Emily stared at it, heart pounding, then crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. She didn't tell Landon, not yet. She didn't want to worry him, or worse, make him back away. But that night she stayed awake with a baseball bat leaning against the front door. A week later, Tornado took his first steps outside the pen. It was a small victory, but to Emily, it felt like a parade. She led him down the gravel drive and into the open pasture beyond the back fence. Land owned by no one, just stretches of grass and sun and quiet. He didn't bolt, he didn't flinch. He walked beside her. "You see that?" she whispered. "You're not just surviving anymore, you're living." But as they turned back toward the trailer, Emily caught the glint of a truck parked half a mile away, across the ridge. Langford's truck. He wasn't alone. She could see two men standing beside him, one with a clipboard, the other with something shiny at his hip. A badge. The following morning, Sheriff Dayton pulled into the gravel drive without warning. Emily stepped out, shielding her eyes from the sun. Tornado stood behind her, tense but calm. "You Emily Miller?" the sheriff asked, though they both knew the answer. "Yes, sir." He removed his sunglasses, studied her. "Got a complaint from Russell Langford. Claims he sold you a horse under distress and now wants to reevaluate the deal. Says there was no written agreement." Emily crossed her arms. "He gave him up. I paid him $1. He didn't want paperwork." "That's the problem," Dayton said, voice slow, Southern drawl as heavy as his belt. "No one can prove who owns what. And Langford, well, he's a man with influence." "I'm not giving Tornado back," she said flatly. "Didn't say you had to, but I am saying, watch your back." The sheriff tipped his hat and left. That night, Emily dreamed of fire. Tornado trapped behind flames, screaming like a wounded soul. She jolted awake, drenched in sweat, and rushed to the shed. But he was there, breathing, calm, safe, and she realized something. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for freedom, for the right to exist without fear. The summer sun had begun to soften, casting long golden shadows over Mercy Ridge, but the tension around Emily's trailer thickened like storm clouds gathering over the hills. Tornado had made steady progress. His gait was stronger, his eyes more alert. The tremors that once haunted him had all but disappeared. But the threats hadn't, and Emily could feel something was coming. She just didn't expect it to come with a knock at the door. When she opened it, a woman stood on the other side. Early 40s, neatly dressed in faded jeans and a tucked-in blouse, a satchel slung over one shoulder. Her presence didn't feel threatening, but it was sharp, intentional. Emily Miller? Yes. I'm Sarah Langford, Russell Langford's sister. Emily froze. I know what you're thinking, Sarah said, offering a small, tired smile. But I'm not here for him. I'm here because I want to help you. Emily stepped outside, warily. Help me how? Sarah pulled a folded document from her satchel and handed it over. This is Tornado's registration, proof that my brother falsified his injury status. Tornado's no ordinary horse. He's descended from the Navajo Sandblood line, a rare bloodline known for speed, stamina, and heart. Emily blinked. Why are you giving me this? Sarah sighed, sitting down on the trailer steps. Because Tornado was born on my watch. I raised him for 2 years before Russell pulled him for the rodeo circuit. I knew he wasn't ready. I knew he wasn't that kind of horse. But my brother doesn't listen to women. She looked at Emily with something close to regret. I thought maybe, just maybe, you could give him the future I couldn't. Emily didn't speak for a moment. Then she reached out and accepted the papers. Thank you, she said softly. Sarah nodded. Keep him safe and be careful. Russell's getting desperate. The very next night, that desperation turned into fire. Emily woke to a strange flicker through the window. When she stepped outside, the smell hit her first. Acrid smoke curling up from behind the shed. Tornado! She ran barefoot across the grass, heart pounding as she saw flames licking the back edge of the paddock fence. Tornado stood at the center of the pen, kicking at the gate, wild-eyed and rearing. She grabbed the hose and doused the fire, her arms trembling as she fought it back. It wasn't large, set in a single corner like a warning. But the damage was clear. Someone had tried to burn them out. By morning, Sheriff Dayton was back. This time, he brought someone else. A tall man in a sharp gray suit with narrow eyes and an even narrower smile. Miss Miller, the man said, handing over a typed notice. You're being sued for possession of stolen livestock. Emily's hand shook as she read the document. This is insane, she muttered. Russell Langford has filed civil claims stating Tornado was never legally relinquished. You have 10 days to respond in court or surrender the animal. The sheriff didn't meet her eyes. Later, as Landon helped her patch up the scorched fence, she finally let the anger out. They're trying to take him, she hissed, tears of fury brimming in her eyes. After everything. After he nearly died out there, and now they think they can just rip him away like he's nothing. Landon rested a hand on her shoulder. We'll fight this. There's got to be someone in this town who's not afraid of Langford. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Sarah Langford gave me documents. Proof. If I can get them notarized, you'll need a lawyer. I don't have money for a lawyer. I might know someone, Landon said. Old guy names Granger. Used to be a rodeo lawyer in Texas. Moved here to retire. Owes my uncle a favor. 2 days later, Emily sat in Granger's cluttered office, clutching the registration papers. The man was in his 70s with wild gray hair and a voice like gravel. He read through the documents slowly, then leaned back in his chair. Well, damn, he muttered. This is good stuff. But you know, Langford'll throw everything he's got at you. He plays dirty. I don't care, Emily said. I'm not backing down. Granger gave her a long, measuring look. You remind me of a filly I once saw in Amarillo, small. But you'd never know it once she hit the dirt. All right. I'll help you. Emily exhaled, a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The hearing was set for Thursday. Word spread through town like wildfire. Some people whispered that Emily had overstepped, that she was just a broke waitress playing horse whisperer. Others rallied behind her. By Wednesday night, someone left a mason jar full of coins and crumpled bills on her trailer steps. A note read simply, "For the fight. Keep going." On the day of the hearing, Emily wore her best jeans and a clean flannel shirt. Landon sat beside her, Sarah 2 rows behind. Russell Langford entered the courthouse like he owned the place. But for the first time, Emily wasn't afraid. She had Tornado's documents. She had Granger. She had truth. The judge called the case. Langford's attorney launched into a well-rehearsed argument, painting Tornado as stolen property, twisting timelines, downplaying his injuries. Then Emily stood. Her voice was steady, her back straight. "Your Honor, I bought Tornado fair and square. Langford didn't want him anymore. He told me to take him. No questions asked. I paid him $1. And I have witnesses. I have his original registration, given to me by his own sister. I have photos of his injuries, and I have veterinary assessments from the days that followed. He was thrown away. I gave him a second chance." She turned toward the gallery, meeting Langford's cold eyes. "And I won't let anyone take that from him again." The morning after the hearing, the sun rose over Mercy Ridge in a soft orange blaze, and for the first time in weeks, Emily felt like she could breathe. The judge hadn't made a final ruling, not yet, but he'd denied Langford's emergency request to seize Tornado. That alone felt like a small miracle. Still, the fight wasn't over. But the town had spoken. Strangers stopped by the diner with kind words. A group of local teens offered to repaint the fence that had been scorched by the fire. And Pastor Dean, who hadn't said 2 words to Emily in years, left a Bible verse taped to her trailer door. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." She wasn't sure she believed in much anymore, but she believed in Tornado, and maybe that was enough. "Are you sure about this?" Landon asked as he saddled Tornado that weekend. The rodeo was back in town. This time, not a professional circuit but a local benefit show, raising funds for horse rescue and rehabilitation. Emily stood beside him in boots and denim, brushing Tornado's mane. He stood calmly, not a trace of the trembling mess he'd once been. "I'm not riding to win," she said. "I'm riding to show them he's more than they thought, more than what they left behind." Landon nodded slowly. "Well, you've got half the county pulling for you. The other half, they're probably too scared of Russell to clap." Emily smiled. "Then we'll just have to ride loud enough for all of them." The arena buzzed with energy. Popcorn, dust, country music, and nervous horses. Tornado didn't flinch once. As Emily rode him into the ring, silence fell like a blanket. Not because of fear, but reverence. The once forgotten horse, the one left to die, now stepped with grace and quiet fire. His coat shimmered under the lights. His eyes scanned the crowd not with fear, but confidence. Emily guided him gently toward the first barrel. It wasn't a competition, but a demonstration. A loop, a figure 8, a small sequence of trust and rhythm. Simple, but not easy. As they moved together, people leaned forward. Something passed between horse and rider, a bond deeper than training or practice. Emily whispered encouragements under her breath, and Tornado responded like he could hear every word. And then, as they finished the last pass, she dropped the reins and let Tornado walk toward the center of the arena on his own. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tornado stood tall, proud, alone in the center. Emily dismounted slowly and walked beside him. Then she took a deep breath. "Some folks in this town said this horse was broken," she said, her voice clear through the speakers. "They said he was dangerous, worthless, better off dead. But I saw something else. I saw a soul worth saving. Her hand rested on Tornado's neck. I'm not here to prove a point. I'm here to thank him for showing me what strength really looks like, and for reminding all of us that no life is too far gone. Applause thundered through the stands. Some stood, others cried, and in the front row, Sarah Langford clapped until her palms stung. Russell Langford was nowhere to be seen. 2 weeks later, the judge made his ruling. Ownership of Tornado was awarded to Emily Miller. In his written statement, the judge cited neglectful abandonment, lack of credible documentation on the plaintiff's side, and compelling evidence of emotional trauma inflicted on the animal. Emily read the ruling twice. Then she sat down next to Tornado in the pasture and just sobbed. Life didn't suddenly get easy after that. Emily still worked nights, bills still came, but something had shifted in Mercy Ridge. Landon and a few volunteers helped her expand the pen into a real training ring. Sarah connected her with a vet who specialized in equine trauma recovery. Pastor Dean offered to host a fundraiser barbecue. And then, one Saturday morning, a truck pulled into her drive. A teenage boy stepped out, holding a thin rope leash tied to a limping paint gelding. "He's real scared," the boy said. "Won't eat around other horses. My uncle said maybe you could help him." Emily looked at the gelding's downcast eyes, his ribs, the way his ears barely moved. "What's his name?" "Doesn't have one," the boy said. She looked to Tornado, who stood watching from the fence, ears perked. Then she looked back. "Let's start with a name." Months passed. The ranch became a haven for forgotten creatures, injured, rejected, misunderstood. Emily called it the Hollow, a place where broken things had space to mend. She offered free riding sessions for kids who'd been through foster care, veterans with PTSD, and kids like that teenage boy who just needed a reason to believe again. One crisp autumn afternoon, Landon handed her a small wooden plaque he'd carved himself. "The Hollow, where healing runs free," it read. She laughed. "You're getting sentimental on me, Tucker." He shrugged. "Maybe, but this place, it's become something more than you ever planned." She looked around. The paddock, the barn, the dusty old trailer that still stood even though she barely slept in it anymore. Then her gaze settled on Tornado, now grazing peacefully among a small group of other horses. She walked over and leaned her head gently against his. "You saved me," she whispered. "Now we'll save others."